Becoming a mom, I made me realize that I underestimated myself. And it's because I had to not plan and pretty much be okay to fail. Before Weston, I was very hard on myself on failing. And I was actually afraid to try things. I thought, I'm going to fail already. Like, I shouldn't even try it.
What's up, fam? It is Jay Williams. I am here with
Coach Wendy.
and
Coach Katie.
and Coach Rebecca, not feeling well today. She's out, so we're holding a vigil in her honor. So today we're going to talk about. We didn't plan for Coach Rebecca not to be here.
Yeah.
But sometimes things happen that are not according to the plan.
Yep.
Right? And she did not plan to not be feeling well. Let's put that back right there. Right? So she did not plan to not be feeling well, but it's all going to turn out well in the end for her. And it kind of got us talking. Like some of the best things that have happened in our lives happen because we don't have a plan or things don't go the way that we expected them to go. Mm-hmm. And so we were talking about that, like, as it relates to our lives, because, you know, looking back on the last few years, some of the biggest lessons that you've learned are sometimes it's okay to not have a plan, right? Or just deal with the cards that you're dealt. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, Wendy.
Yeah.
Tell me about a time when things did not go according to plan, and how did you deal with it, and what did you take away from it?
Yeah. So this is a 2021.
Yep.
And this is the time where I found out that I was pregnant with my son, Weston. Yeah.
That wasn't the plan?
That was not the plan for me to get pregnant in 2021.
Right.
So, yeah, did not plan for that to happen. It's a big shocker.
Got it.
For me. I actually didn't find out that I was pregnant until like maybe almost 2 months.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I was 2 months in and I had no idea that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
So I definitely did not see this coming and I wasn't prepared at all for a baby.
Yeah, what was that like? What did that feel like?
I was a bit confused because at that point, the person that I happened to get pregnant from, we weren't together. We were actually broken up. And the very first thing that I thought to myself was like, oh my God, I have to reach out to this person again. I don't want to talk to this person. Now I'm pretty much stuck with this person until, for forever, kind of. So a lot of that was going through my mind when I first found out that I was pregnant. The second thing, I thought to myself, well, I don't know if I want to have a baby right now. Like, I'm not ready to have a baby right now. Not prepared for it.
Yeah.
So that was like the other second thing. And
so everything up to that point that all the things that you thought you were going to do, all the goals that you had, you're just like, that stuff's off the table.
Yeah. Everything. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the reasons we want to talk about this today is because this happens to our clients a lot, right? I mean, getting pregnant doesn't happen a lot.
They're like, oh, shit.
Again, every single time. No, but like what does happen is, you make all of these plans and then, things just change.
Yeah. And then I was a person who always wanted to have kids. Like I always talked about having kids and I love babies. And, at that point, after that relationship, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm getting into my 30s. It's okay if I don't have kids. Yeah. Like, I'm actually kind of happy that I'm able to do all the things that I want to do with, like, just me. So, like, I was loving my life at that point, and I already had said that it's okay if I don't have kids. And then, bam.
Nope.
Oh, my gosh.
And then it's like, life was like, what are you talking about? So, which was, I think, at that point, it was kind of funny. I giggled a little bit, but then I cried after because I was like, oh, man, it's happening. So.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the bigger things that can happen, right, in your life. And it's funny, there's like 4 or 5 sort of big events that really change people's lives. Mm-hmm. So, relationship related. So starting a relationship, ending a relationship, birthing another human, that would be kind of relationship related. There's moving, right? So going from, one place to another, which is something you've done since 2020. And then there is like changing jobs. You're spending, 8 hours a day at something and then you're doing something else. Like these are major life changes.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think most people think of pregnancy and marriage as like a major life change, but people don't always think of moving as a major life change or changing jobs as a major change. And sometimes they don't even think of relationships that way. Right. But even if you are like me, you have no feelings, right? It's still very disruptive, and it really throws off all of your kind of plans, and you have to like reset everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you had this moment and you were like, okay, I'm going to have, you decided you're going to have this kid.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So like, I mean, it was just like everything else went out the window. Like you just come up with another plan. Like how did you?
Yeah. Well, I had options, right? And like you mentioned earlier, I decided to keep the baby. The other thing that I did do is I decided to be a single mom after discussing, letting the other person know. The person didn't seem like they wanted to be in my baby's life or in my life at that point. So I made a choice of me deciding what I was going to do. And I decided to keep the baby and, be a single mom at that point. And at that point, I had no idea how I was going to do it.
Yeah.
How did you, those are two, keeping the baby, right, is a big decision. And then being a single mom is a big decision. Like, did you make that on your own? Like, who did you talk to? Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
I did talk to a lot of people, but what I found out that a lot of people had a lot of opinions, and that wasn't helping me at all. I was actually getting more confused on what I actually wanted. And I actually told people, the people that I had told that I was pregnant at that point, they tried to help, right, by telling me what I should do. And I know it came from a good place, but at that point, I was just so confused. I was also hormonal, right? I was 2 months pregnant already, and it just wasn't helping. So what I actually did is I worked out for and that's one thing I always can rely on me making myself feel a little better, even if it's just like 0.5%. It always makes me feel better. So, and I didn't really think about it at that point for those 2 weeks. I just kind of kept going with my normal routine. Not that I ignored it or pretended like it wasn't there, but I just didn't think about it for 2 weeks.
So you gave yourself some time to process this thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Versus making a decision like when I have all my feelings and, I didn't know at that point what to do. Or going based on what people thought that I should do.
Yeah.
So gave myself some space, gave myself some time. And one thing that stood out for me, because my grandma, she was a single mom too as well. She had 10 kids on her own. And
that's more than a single mom.
What's that?
She had 10 kids?
Yeah.
Oh my
She had 10 kids.
As a single parent.
Oh, Lord.
Wow.
Yeah, she did. My dad
incredible.
never met his dad too.
Yeah.
And I thought about her. I really thought about her when I was going through those 2 weeks. And I told myself, you know what? I actually want this baby. I always wanted to be a mom. And this is my time, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to not have this baby because I'm going based on what this other person's needs, right? The other person didn't want the baby.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to listen to any of that stuff. I'm going to keep it because I actually want the baby. I always wanted to be a mom, and this is the time. Maybe in my mind, I saw it very differently. I planned it very differently with a person who wanted the baby. Maybe we were, together, living together. That's not the case. Things doesn't happen as planned, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of thought about when for during those 2 weeks. And then I also thought about my grandma.
Yeah.
She was able to, keep alive 10 kids on her own, and she was able to provide for them. Also, this was like back home in El Salvador, not here, right, where you don't make any money, right? She's able to make it, then hell yeah, I can make it too as well.
Yeah.
So those are the two things that definitely helped me, and that's when I decided that I'm going to go for it.
And so once you made that decision, it was just like all the pressure was off. Like now,
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I didn't think that I didn't think that I had to, be financially stable or, have another parent, or I didn't think of the other things. They weren't as important. I think the most important thing for me at that point is, do I want this?
Yeah.
Right. Am I doing it for myself? Right. And that's pretty much all I cared about up
Yeah.
until, even through the pregnancy, right? That's what I kind of hold on to as much as possible.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so good. Like
Yeah,
that's
that's really good.
really that's really important. I mean, we're talking about a big life change.
Yeah.
But this could be anything.
Yeah, that's
Right? It's just like, you're starting a new like nutrition plan and
Yeah.
your spouse says, "I'm not doing this,"
Yeah.
and you need to cook me whatever enchiladas every
Yeah.
night.
Right.
And it's like you might need some time to process that.
Yeah.
And then, then you have to make a decision that's based
Yeah.
on what you want,
Yeah.
not based on what everybody else wants or
Yeah.
what everybody else thinks you should do,
Yes.
so that you can be at peace with whatever you decide.
Yeah.
And then once you make a decision, then it's like, okay, you might have to have some uncomfortable conversations. But if you never make a decision,
Yeah.
then you're just in that like
Yeah.
ether of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the other things you were saying you learned over this last couple of years is like, you're in better shape than you were before you were pregnant.
Yeah. I, becoming a mom just in general I made me realize that I underestimated myself like before Weston. And it's because I had to not plan. I think it's part of it. Like I had to, think like on my feet more, right? And pretty much be okay to fail, right? I think before Weston, I was very hard on myself on failing, and I was actually afraid to try things because I already knew to myself. I thought I'm gonna fail already. Like I shouldn't even try it.
Yeah.
Why should I try it? Because I already know that I'm just not gonna make it or whatever it is. And like now, I don't think that way anymore. And it's because with becoming a single mom, right, and deciding to keep a baby on my own. And I wasn't on my own. I had my support, right, but I had to make that decision, right?
Yeah.
Not my parents, not anyone. It's up to me
Yeah.
at this point. So, and I think that has really helped me mentally with everything after that, like especially with like my fitness. Even work, right? Coaching my clients too as well, just personal life too as well, I think. So yeah, it's been, I think, probably the best thing that has happened to me, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I told you this when you came back. It was like after a couple of months when you're back, it's like you're just a different person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I 100%. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. And that was, it is really just a matter of kind of letting go and accepting that you have what it takes to make it through whatever comes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I thought about my grandma. She is like one tough lady. Like she, and that's what I told to myself. I was like, I can do this. Like my grandma was able to raise 10 kids on her own. And like she wasn't making like a lot of money. Like it's back home. Like you don't make a lot of money back then. She was able to, keep all her kids alive. So and that definitely helped me too, and just not doubt myself. But at the end, I had to decide, right?
Yeah. 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 That's really good. I mean, this is something that you kind of learned at your previous job as well, right?
Yeah.
You said something about like every job is kind of like,
that like what you were saying reminds me so much of that, of how like, I'm more willing to lean into things that scare me or that I might fail with, because I know that no matter what, like I can figure out some way. Like it makes me curious about some of the puzzles that you've had to solve along the way.
Yeah.
But definitely like through tree work, we encountered challenges like that all the time. And I was telling these guys beforehand that I had a crew leader one time who would explain it as every single job that we were given was a puzzle that had to be figured out, or like a game to win. And you weren't always given like the right pieces or the right amount of money or the right time frame, but it was like part of the fun of it for him, and he made it fun for us, is like figuring out how are we going to get it done with what we had in the time that we had. And like sometimes it forced us to get really creative. But when we were in that line of thinking, it wasn't like, can we get it done or not? That wasn't the question. The question is like, we will get it done. All right, then let's like, the job then becomes figuring out how the puzzles or like pieces are going to fit together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's kind of like the decision
That's right.
You make the decision like, this is happening.
Yeah, this is happening.
Yeah.
This is what we've got.
Yeah.
We're going to figure it out.
Yeah. It's like once you sign the contract or whatever, it's like, we're getting this done.
Yeah.
And, it's not a matter of if, but when.
Yeah.
And so then you just do whatever it takes to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you break out of your comfort zone.
Totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the reason I want to talk about this. I think this is so relevant for everybody at every stage in life, but especially when you're trying to make like kind of difficult habit changes.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of times what we see, and I was just talking to another coach this morning about this. It's like, what do you do if a client is just not that bought in? And it's like, they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
You have to decide that this is the thing that I want, and I am willing to do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, maybe it will take longer. Maybe it'll be harder. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll have to have more uncomfortable conversations, but the decision is made, so you're going for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's part of when we talk about goals, we're always talking about setting goals for clients, and everyone needs to have a goal. That's part of the reason, is because we want to force a decision.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you aren't deciding to do something, then we're just kind of hanging out.
Yeah.
Waiting for something good to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And you don't have to decide for it to be your number one either, but you do have to decide for it to be your number 2 or your number 3 or number 4 or whatnot.
Yeah. 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 You don't have to sacrifice everything.
That's right. Yeah.
But you have to do what it takes for as long as it takes to get it done.
Yeah.
And sometimes that will mean like, hey, this is going to have to be number 1, right? Maybe not forever, but maybe for a week, maybe 6 weeks,
Right.
Yep.
right? Okay, great. That's not your whole life.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Is like even having a baby, obviously, your kid is really important to you.
Yeah.
But, right now you're here. The kid's not here.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Yeah.
there is going to be a time where he's not the number 1.
Right.
Right? It's like, great, I have to work. I have to, like I want to work out. I, going to see my friends, all this other stuff. Like you're still way up there.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not everything.
Right.
And it's not, it's kind of like you made that decision. You're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
And you just do whatever it takes. And sometimes that means everything. Sometimes it's just some of the stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So what was something that came up that you had to figure out?
So I think it's like, I mean, we need like maybe 2 days to talk about it, but I think that the biggest thing that I had to figure out is like, okay, how am I going to provide for my kid? Right. And the very first thing is like, well, I even told Jay, I messed around with Jay and Mike. I was like, do you guys still want me if I'm pregnant? Like, and that was my thing. Like, am I going to be able to keep, like, continue to coach people while my pregnancy? Because I never done it. So I don't know if I wasn't able to do that. And same thing, like, I told them that I was pregnant and everyone was pretty happy for me. And especially like this place was super supportive and made my pregnancy it was just amazing. Yeah. Like it was great with all the support. But that was the number one thing that I had to think to myself is like, okay, am I going to be able to provide for my kid and myself, right? And thankfully, my parents stepped in for that, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't even ask. It was them who asked and told me that they were going to be there for me. So I moved in with them. Yeah. And more so, my mom had 3 kids of her own. She knows about this the best. So why not, come to a person who had gone through pregnancy 3 times. So just basically moved in with my parents and with my mom who could, help me go through my pregnancy and not go by myself on my own. So I would say I wasn't on my own, right? I didn't have a partner, right? Like I had planned in the past how I envisioned it, right? Yeah. But I had support, and that was pretty much more than enough that I needed at that very beginning. Yeah. So that was the number one thing that I had to figure out, right? And thankfully, my parents, they were there for me, and they took me in, and that was it for that part.
Yeah. You didn't even live with them for that long.
No, I didn't. I moved in, I think, when I was 8 months pregnant. But before that, I was living with roommates, right? And that was the other thing too, right? I had roommates, and at that point, my roommates, we had to go our separate ways because they didn't want to be with a crying baby.
Yeah.
Different lifestyle.
Yeah, different lifestyle. So I had to get my own place, right? But then again, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to do this. And then that's when my parents stepped in, and I moved in with my parents. Yeah. So made it a little bit easier.
So I'm curious. So now you have this. You decide you're going to do this. Did you sit down and write down here's how everything's going to go?
Oh my God, I did.
Yeah.
I so did. And it was stressful. It was so stressful actually mapping things around. Right. It was probably the worst thing I did at that point. Because it was driving me crazy, and I was just it was super stressful. So I had to stop, because I think at that point I was like, you know what? I got pregnant. I didn't even plan for this. Yeah. So why am I even planning this for now? It's useless at that point. So I did map it out from the very beginning, where I was going to deliver, name, every single thing, also, budgeting wise, right? Diapers, to the very detail. Yeah. And that was super stressful, and I absolutely hated that part.
Did you stick to those plans, or did you toss them out?
I just tossed. No. I at that point I was like, this is a waste of my time. Yeah. I could be.
Happen.
I could just be maybe going for a walk, right, or working out, right. At this point, this is useless. At this point. Things are not gonna go this way at that point. And it took me a week to realize that it wasn't gonna be helpful. But I did map it out. I wrote every single thing that I thought it was gonna help me.
And so you had to have a few uncomfortable conversations.
Yes.
So like you said, one of them was, I don't know why this was uncomfortable for you, but hey, you're still gonna want a pregnant lady? It's fine.
Well, I mean, I don't know, right? I mean, I know that you guys were gonna do that. But I just didn't know, right? It's like me not knowing, because I'm the type who plans everything. Right. So this is something super different to me, right? I didn't know. I just didn't know, because it wasn't my thing. I'm used to planning everything. I'm the type of person who plans their outfit the day before. I pick my clothes the night before the next day. Yeah. I'm that type, right? Yeah. So it's a whole different new territory that I wasn't. Right. I wasn't, I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, I'm the opposite of that.
Really? I was taught that since I was very little.
Yeah.
And I was going to private school, Catholic school. You had to pick your clothes before. The night before.
So once you kind of toss that plan out the window, you're just okay, whatever needs to happen, I'll just make it happen.
I was going with the flow.
Yeah. Has it been like that since then, or have you gotten back to some planning?
I got back to some planning, what's needed for me, but for the most part, I want to say, no, I let it go. Yeah. I learned.
So you're basing your decisions on what? You're just kind of going with the flow of life, or do you have
I take it day by day, right? So for example, I remember we did the competition. I forget, the Forgotten. Yeah. So that was probably the first time that I felt like my old, not my old self, but that I felt fit after having Weston, right? Yeah. Especially, I remember when that very first workout where I was thinking of scaling, and you were like, no, you're not going to scale. You're going to do this because you can do this. And up until that point, I was still doubting myself, because I was like, I don't think so. I haven't worked out. I haven't, with my nutrition, I haven't been so great. I'm still breastfeeding. There was just so many buts going through my head at that point. And I just went with it. Yeah, and then the very second before I even lift the sandbag, I remember it was a sandbag. That was the thing that I was afraid that I was going to fail. I was you know what? If I fail, so what? At least I tried. That's what I told myself. At least I give it my all. Yeah. And I was fine. So after that, I started to clean some habits, right? Kind of started working on things. So, being active with my nutrition a little bit more, and not where I'm at right now, but just doing little things that will help me get back into me feeling like my athlete self. And then also loving training as much as I did before having a baby, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it took me about 4 or 5 months, almost 6 months to get back into, after having a baby. So I still, at that point, I still didn't feel like myself.
Yeah.
And then once we finished that competition, we placed 3rd place.
Yeah.
I was like,
which we
holy
wouldn't
crap.
have done if you hadn't have done that. Seriously. Yeah. We did really well.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have done that if you hadn't have done that. If you would have scaled that one thing, we wouldn't have finished 3rd place.
Yeah. So that was like another reminder, like, hey, you're still underestimating yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And so like now I take it day by day. And with my nutrition and my training, I see it as feedback, right? So week by week, I usually go, right? So like, let's say the week my back squats didn't feel great. Okay. Why didn't it feel great? Oh, you didn't get enough sleep. Okay. Prioritize next week sleep, whatever the case is. So, I still do some planning.
Yeah.
I don't do it as much as I did before. Before I would spend like, hours and hours and hours, like monthly, right? Planning my whole entire month.
Yeah.
And like now I'm even considering hiring a coach, so I don't have to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have to do the planning, right? So like things like that, I'm more open-minded to other things that I thought to myself that I had to do myself, or it has to be this way.
Yeah. Right. All just that. I mean, that's the big benefit of having a kid. No, that's really great. I mean, basically, it sounds like you're putting yourself in situations where you have to figure it out a little bit more, right? Just like little bit uncomfortable situations. Like, let's see if this will work. I might fail.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah, and I think failing's a big one. I'm okay to fail now.
Yeah.
I don't say like failure. I'm saying more like feedback. That's what I tell my clients.
Yeah.
It's not that you're failing, or if we have like an off scan, it's just feedback, right? Let's just see what we can do to help with this.
Yeah.
I think for me before, failing was like a really bad thing for me. Like it was not okay for me to fail.
Yeah.
That was like more my mentality, I think, before. Like now I'm actually okay. I mean, I don't feel the best when I fail. I still have my feelings or whatever, but I'm okay with it. I'll get over it, right?
Yeah.
And I learned from that, and I try to do better after that. But yeah, I'm okay to fail, and I don't beat myself up like I did before.
Yeah.
That's
so
really
much,
good.
so much good stuff in there. I mean, I just think that's like basically what the idea is. Part of why you planned everything before is because you were so afraid of failing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now without that fear, it's like you don't have to plan every little detail to make sure that it goes well.
Yes.
Because you've experienced this. So if you plan things and then they don't go well, and then you just fall apart.
Right.
Because it's just like, my plan, this was my plan.
Yeah.
What the hell am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how you make progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if everything went to plan, you wouldn't need us.
Yeah.
That's
It's just like,
yeah.
So, it really is like a process of getting comfortable just being where you're at.
Yeah.
Up until the birth too as well, I had a birth plan, like, they recommend you to do. The birth plan did not go as planned either.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting for my son to be in the NICU for 13 days and almost lost his life. I almost lost him when he was born.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming, right? And that was like another thing, with that whole me getting pregnant and then almost losing my son, spending 13 days in the NICU. I wasn't able to hold him like until he was 3 days old.
Yeah.
That's not what they tell you, right? They tell you, make sure you have the bonding. I didn't have the bonding. My son was fighting for his life when he was born. I didn't even know that my son wasn't breathing until like he was in the little, incubator.
Yeah.
And it's like, I even planned, my birth plan, and it didn't go as planned. So it's like another thing that kind of just hit me and was like, you know what? No planning for you.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really like, it's a really useful skill to learn to be able to adapt.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And this is the thing, like when we come up with plans for our clients, we have no expectation that it's going to go to plan.
That's right.
It's just like, this is a guideline.
Yeah. Compass.
Right?
Yeah.
If all things are perfect, then this is what you're going to do to get to where you need to be.
Yeah.
That's right.
But all things are never perfect,
Yeah.
and we cannot predict the future.
Yeah, no,
so
you can't.
It's just like, okay, well, let's see what happens,
Yep.
and then we will change the plan, or
Yeah.
we'll come up
Iterate.
with a new plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we learned that, whenever something bad happens at work, that, we go to the M&Ms. Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
Like that was a new thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't part of the plan. So let's figure out like how we're gonna
Yeah.
Yeah.
deal with the M&M thing.
Yeah.
The dealing with it might be, hey, maybe we go get a new job.
Yeah.
That's not part of the plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? But if your job is driving you so crazy that you're eating for stress and like it's ruining your health,
Yeah.
is it worth it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you start to kind of get further and further, and you realize like, if you are focused on the outcome that you want,
Yeah.
then you will get there eventually.
Yeah.
Right? But it's never going to go as planned.
No.
Yeah.
We have this whole like we set ourselves up with a plan, like we have expectations at a certain level, and like people are really not great at dealing with the gap that exists when the expectation and the reality don't line up. Like it's really uncomfortable for people. So it sounds almost like what you're describing is like what has happened is there's like what I see with clients a lot is when expectation and reality aren't aligning, there's a lot of different things that can happen. One is like start to externalize, like it's everybody else's fault. Like blame happens first, and I do this too sometimes. It's everybody else's fault. And then it's like the shame sets in, like, oh, maybe it is my fault. Oh shoot, like
Yeah.
there's something wrong with me then that like my identity isn't aligning with what I'm expecting of myself.
Right.
And sometimes because shame is such a strong emotion, there's secrecy. So it's like what might happen is a client might be doing a thing for a long time before they even admit it to me or admit it to themselves. And it becomes a thing that then we can address. And so it's like, well, what helps is if we can limit, like expectation and reality are not going to be aligned often. Like that's basically
Right.
the definition of things don't go according to plan.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what can we do to like calm the nervous system in that moment and then reduce the time between when that realization is met and when we act or do something about it or recognize that either we need to do something to change our reality or something to change expectation. And the people who do this like really well look like superheroes. I mean, they look like, what do they call it? Like invincible. Like I remember, I worked with crew leaders who did this really well, tree climbers. And what would happen is when you're in a tree working on it, you're up there either in the bucket or you're climbing. There's no one else that's up there with you most of the time. You're just up there and it's like the definition of having to figure things out for yourself. And there would be some crew leaders who would make a cut, the piece wouldn't fall in the right way. And then they're having to like figure out what to do with it and their equipment's in the wrong spot, all this stuff. And it's like the crew leaders who would get really agitated about it, generally the jobs would take longer and there would be worse outcomes. Like the thing that was a small thing would then turn into a big thing because they panic and they try to fix it right away. But then the people who I like admired so much and I tried to learn a lot from were the crew leaders who like a thing would happen that clearly wasn't according to their plan, but there was absolutely zero change in body language, like zero change in their behavior. It was just like smooth movement to the next thing, smooth movement to the next thing. And you could tell that it was just like, it was like, okay, that's great. Like now this is my new reality. So here's the next step that I'm going to take. And those jobs, usually the things that were small issues didn't become big ones. And we usually got done faster anyway. And so it's like, yeah, this stuff happens all the time. Like when expectation and reality for me don't align and that happens, it's like, all right, step one, call the nervous system. Like this isn't a crazy thing. This is figure outable. And then step two, like how can I reduce the time between like some kind of anxiety or panic or like quick response about that misalignment and how can I just like move smoothly into action?
Take some sort of next action.
That's right. Like, let me just channel the behavior of Leo, that crew leader who I admired, who would just like, doop, something bad would happen. It would just be on to the next, on to the next, on to the next.
So good.
I see you do this.
Channeling my inner grandma.
Right? Yeah, totally. Like,
Yeah.
and you're describing how, like, I'm the kind of person who would set my clothes out. Like, it's so funny because, well, I've only known you for less than a year, almost a year.
Yeah.
But it's like, you've never struck me as like the anxious, like the anxious planning type. Like you just like, you're very chill, like very go with the flow, even though like you set plans and like you do the thing.
Yeah.
That has changed.
That's
Yeah.
yes, that has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She doesn't have like, she wasn't like super high anxiety, but she did not like change.
Yeah, no.
I'm the same way. Like I used to be super organized, like super, and I like organization and planning is so a strong suit of mine. But once you are up in a tree, like I remember being up in a tree one time, and it was my very first crane job, which is like there's a giant crane that's coming and removing pieces that you are cutting. And so you're cutting these very large pieces at a time, and they're literally getting lifted off right in front of your face. So if like the angle's off, or like you have a shitty crane operator, the communication isn't just right, it's like, that's it, like you're done. Like it can end really poorly, those jobs. And I just remember being up there and being like, you feel the anxiety come up, and you're like, I remember my very first cut I did with the crane. I'm like, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. Like I'm talking to this guy, and like I'm just telling him to like, I don't know, lift it this way. I don't know, do your crane thing. Like I'm just gonna make a cut.
Don't hit me.
But like inside, like even just thinking about it, like I'm remembering of like how the panic was building, and it's like, oh, if I panic in this moment, I'm gonna make a shittier cut. So I remember having to just like completely channel down, like dial down. And it's amazing, like when your life is on the line, which is every day doing tree work, like when your life is on the line and you have to make decisions that are good decisions, it's like it forces you to channel that calm real quick. And it was basically because of that skill. It wasn't the skill of learning to climb a tree or the skill of like learning to do a bar muscle up or whatever it was that has like advanced me or like forced me to take bigger leaps with my life. It's like learning that like I can stay calm and make good decisions when I don't know all the answers.
Yeah.
When the place is on fire.
That's right. I would not have started my own business had I not make that cut with the crane. Like, it's kind of how it goes.
Did I tell you about the time I almost drowned?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the second time I almost died. No, maybe it's the fourth. I don't know. Anyways.
Fourth?
Yeah, I've had a few. So
you're like a cat.
Let's hope. So as you were describing that story, it reminded me of the time that I almost drowned. And it was basically like I was training for, this was not long ago. I was training for the triathlon. It was maybe like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. I'm not a great swimmer. And when I started training, I could only swim like 2 laps in the pool. And then by the end, I was able to swim a mile. But somewhere in the middle, I did an open water swim. And we used to do these open water swims every week. We'd go out to the Berkeley Marina or whatever. And one day I was late for the swim. And so what happens is you go out with a group of people, you swim to a buoy, and there's like a kayak that supports you, right? So I was about 10, 15 minutes late. All the people were out. And I'm slow at swimming. They were all fast. So they were already at the buoy, like a half mile off the shore. And there was a guy on the dock. He was like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Go catch up. And I was like, cool. This is like my 5th one or something. And so I get halfway out. And like I look around and I see nobody and I see nothing.
Oh no.
And I'm like out there and I'm like, I just remembered I just learned how to swim like 4 weeks ago or whatever it was. And I just started to like feel this crushing anxiety.
Yeah.
Because it's just like I can't see anyone. Yeah. Everything seems super far away.
Yeah.
There's no kayak anywhere.
Yeah.
And I just started sinking. Right. And I mean like I'm thick. I went down. Right? There's no part of me that is buoyant. Right? And so I was going down and I was like, okay, if I continue to feel panic, I'm going to die right now.
Yeah.
And so like I wasn't completely submerged yet. So I was just like, okay, what do I need to do? All right, just lay on my back. And just like laid on my back until I could like calm myself down, just like 5-10 seconds. And then I was like, okay, I can see back where I started. I'm just going to turn around and just do 1 stroke in that direction. Right. And I was nervous as hell. Turned around, did 1 stroke. Okay, I'm going to do another stroke. All right, I'm going to breathe on every stroke. I know you're not supposed to do that, but I'm going to do that just to like calm myself down. So it was like 1, another. I mean, I was back there within like 6 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, if I would have just let myself feel that anxiety, I would have gone down. And once you take on water, it's not coming out.
Yeah.
You know, and there's nobody around to like save me. Right. And so it was just like that sort of feeling And it was that, like, I had to process it so fast
Yeah.
so that I could figure out what is the next action. And I think about that often because there's been a lot of times in my life, not life and death, but a lot of times where it's like, you can spend a week or 2 weeks or a month, like sitting in a limbo of like, oh, this is so terrible. Or you can like process it and then take the next action to get to where you need to be. And I do like what you just described is like, okay, this unexpected thing happened to me that's going to change my life forever. I need some time to process this. What am I going to do now? Once you sort of process it and you do whatever you need to do, like it might be a breathing exercise, you might go work out, you know, you might journal about it. I would sometimes take a walk for, you know, things like that. But then you do it and then you're like, okay, I have to take one step forward. What's that going to be?
Right.
You know? So I had a little bit of flashback as you were describing.
No, it's
that
just,
today.
it's really good. I mean, and like in this thing, like you said, like it happens big. These things happen like in big and small ways for people. Even just this weekend is an example of like, I took a trip this weekend and I came back and I didn't really have the energy or like the wherewithal to do a big shop and meal prep on Sunday. And so it was like, I could have kind of panicked and gone into like, what am I going to do mode and like cancel plans that I had with my family for Father's Day and like take care of that thing. And it was like, I'll figure it out. And like, sure enough, I like picked up some salad and some rotisserie chicken on Monday. And it was just like, but being calm in that moment and like keeping priorities meant that like I got to spend time with my family. I didn't feel guilty about it. I wasn't panicking about the week ahead. And it was like when the time came to get food, like got food. But I think, I see it a lot with folks, like when little things come up. I was just watching a show. I like watching the show Survivor.
Oh, okay.
So I was just watching the show the other night, and there was this challenge where they had to push this giant ball over this obstacle, and both teams were trying to do it, and it was very clear when they started doing it, like they were just using the wrong technique. And if you had asked those teams if the thing was even possible, like in that moment, they may have said like no, but they had like made the decision. Basically, this plan was in action. Like the challenge was happening, and so it was like it didn't become a matter of like, do I keep trying or not? It was like we'll figure out a way. There's like no other way. Right. And it reminds me of like what happens when obstacles, like clients run into obstacles. It's like, do you accept that like no matter what, I'm getting to the gym and everything else is figure outable, you know, or I'm gonna eat healthy, and that can look a bunch of different ways. It can be, you know, long prepared meal, or it could be like a healthy thing that you pick up at Wendy's, right? Like it can be all of that. It's just like making the decision and then making everything else figure outable.
Yeah. And knowing that it's okay to fail. Most things are not life and death. So I think this is a great place to end. Wendy, I appreciate you sharing
thank you.
that story. That's
great.
really insightful. So many lessons to be learned there.
Lots of lessons.
So and
we
also
need a part 2.
You know, it's funny. I also I look at what people that have practiced what you just described, I look at what they're capable of versus people that like spend all of their time planning. And it's like, there's a difference. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have any plans because you won't accomplish any big things without some sort of plan and long-term vision. But like that ability to figure things out and just work through things on the fly, like so much more can get done when you do that. And so it's a muscle worth kind of building.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, we've got plenty of others. Go check out this one over here.